All right, well, thank you, Sarah. Thanks for inviting us to be here. It's a pleasure to be able to do this out of the comfort of my living room. Um, my name is Elizabeth Crawford. I'm professor of music performance at Ball State University, where I teach clarinet. I've been there, I'm in my 15th year, and I've known Diana Haskell for quite a while. We had the opportunity to work together, I think it was in 2002 or something. I can't remember exactly,
Something
but
like that.
yeah, so we have been working together, if you're not aware, on the International Clarinetist Corona competition. This is a new competition that the first phase of it, the klezmer competition, was just announced last week. We have a jazz competition coming up, and then there will be a classical competition in January, we hope, sometime. We're waiting on publishers to get back to us. So I'm going to turn it over to Diana now.
My name is Diana Haskell, and I'm Associate Principal Clarinet with the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra in the Midwest in Missouri. And I've been with this orchestra for, I guess, 16 years. Before that, I was assistant E-flat in Milwaukee Symphony, and then principal in Buffalo Philharmonic and some smaller orchestras, Savannah and Charleston symphonies as well. And it is our pleasure to be here today. I teach at Chautauqua Institution. Oh, you're going to hear a little bit of sound from the background. I have an old dog sitting on the floor. We're going to hope that he doesn't make too much noise, but sometimes he kind of makes funny sounds. Anyway, so I teach at Chautauqua, and I teach chamber music as well as intensive clarinet lessons each summer. And we thought it might be kind of interesting for us to talk to you about playing in chamber music groups, or if you're planning on being an orchestral musician when auditions start up again. It's just good to have some information about how to work with people. I know for myself, I was in the same woodwind quintet for 4 years at Eastman School of Music, and sometimes we fought. And I think a lot of it could have been helped if we had some sort of ground rules. And again, in orchestra, there are some sometimes unspoken kinds of things that, if you don't know, you can really get caught. So we thought we would talk about this today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to share my screen with a keynote presentation. Libby, if you want to talk while I'm trying to do that.
Yeah, all of the things that Diana's talking about is great, and they also apply to not only being a student, but being a member of an orchestra, or being on the faculty of a school, even if it's, you've got your first adjunct position somewhere. All of these rules apply to all aspects of music. So this talk is geared for everybody, maybe not even just musicians. It's just geared to everybody.
That's right. Just life skills. So it's called How to Rehearse with Others Without Yelling, or just how to get along. And sometimes it's very difficult to do this. And I will not speak for Libby. I'm certainly not perfect in any of this, but these are sometimes goals to aspire to. Definition of etiquette. It's a set of conventional rules of personal behavior in polite society, usually in the form of some sort of ethical code. Chamber groups, studios, and jobs all have ethical codes. Many times, though, they are unspoken. So it's a good idea to put some of these codes in writing, especially maybe if you're in a clarinet studio, you can ask your teacher to help you with this. And you can also use these in any chamber music group that you're with. It saves a lot of issues. By the way, this is Chautauqua. It's so pretty there. So you'll see some pictures as we go along of where I teach. And it really is, as Libby said, for anybody: orchestra, band, chamber musicians, band orchestra directors, teachers, freelancers, and just for humans. And here's something. You obtained a position. You are in a new chamber group. Maybe you have an internship, an orchestra job, a teaching job, whatever it is. Okay, you've won the job. How do you keep the position? There's a whole industry around trying to win auditions, but very little talk about how to keep a position. And some of this, I think Libby and I will say, we've learned from the School of Hard Knocks.
Absolutely.
I've made a lot of mistakes, and so hopefully this might help you. Okay, Libby, you want to start with this?
Oh yeah, easy stuff. I like easy stuff. All right, use deodorant. It might seem like it's, well, why would you need to put that in there? But trust us, you really do need to be aware of that. Be careful with the lotions that have scents and perfumes. And then pick up around your chair. I know that when I played in orchestra or when I've subbed in orchestras, you want to, your chair is like your office desk. And when you leave that space, leave it clean. I mean, you don't want your stagehands to come along to have to pick up after you, or anybody else in your group to have to pick up after you. So those seem like simple things, but they're really, really important. Go on, Diana. Oh, you're muted. Wait, why are
Sorry,
you?
there. I will say that all of these, using deodorant, avoiding any scented lotions, and picking up around your chair, this is very common, even though it seems like really basic advice. It's very common in orchestras. And we all forget on occasion, but there are usually some repeat offenders in one of these areas. And so it's really a good idea to remember about this, because over time, people become irritated. Go ahead, Libby.
Yeah, and learning your music thoroughly. We know that, but it's not just learning our own parts. We really need to know what's going on with our colleagues when we're playing in a chamber ensemble. I've been working with some students now who have recitals coming up, and I'm always stressing to them, you really have to know what's going on in the piano. You have to know how it all fits together. So you have to listen all the time, not only studying the score with your part, but studying the score with an entire score or the piano score. Don't just follow your part. And I like this be the nerd who takes learning seriously, because that's kind of what it takes.
I will say that I was not good at this in college. I could sight read really, really well. And so I didn't really know how to practice. And that was not being arrogant. I just didn't know. And so when I was in a chamber quintet, oftentimes they came to the rehearsal and sight read. And it was fine as long as the music was pretty easy. But then when the music got harder, I was unable to do this. And it really took somebody else saying to me, you know what, stop clowning around, get serious about this. So it is important. It's, again, seems basic, but many of us kind of slip in this regard.
Yeah. And this quote, Diana, Elizabeth Osling's a friend of yours, isn't she?
Yes.
Yeah.
I asked her if she had any advice for students, and she said, take your job seriously. Don't be too casual about taking days off or taking a leave. Communicate clearly with your section or your group before going to a personnel manager or a chamber coach. If in college, try to handle these things within, and try not to be disrespectful to the others in terms of taking time off.
Yeah, and we know of people who have lost jobs because they've been casual about not taking their job seriously. And so, even if you're in a tenured position in an orchestra or at a university, you have to take it seriously.
And toe the
So,
line. Sometimes we want to be so independent and we think we know, but we all have to kind of report to somebody, and it's just better if we can, as much as we can, to handle these things internally and not make it a big deal for the rest of the group.
yeah. Learning management skills that's useful. We've got some great things here. Diana listed spreadsheets, reading contracts, finances, librarian skills, marketing, videographer, leadership classes, Zoom, recording, any of these things. In today's society, it's not like it was when Diana and I were coming through. It's changed so completely. And when we were students, it had changed so completely from before, and it keeps evolving. And so you have to have this other set of skills in addition to being a great player and having great interpersonal skills. You really need to have these other skills too. So all of these things here, find something. If you've got a quintet you're playing with, assign jobs, find a job that you want to do, because it's going to make you more marketable in the long run.
That's correct. And, the easy skills that musicians kind of naturally morph towards are things like, building a website. And really, the things that we need to understand more are finances, learning how to create and read a budget and follow it, and understanding Excel spreadsheets, really understanding finances of whatever organization you're involved with. It's really easy, especially when you're young, to think, well, somebody else will take care of it. And then suddenly you might be on an orchestra committee, and then you have to start from scratch. So it's better in college to begin to get a handle on some of these things. And there's usually somebody at a university in a music school who can teach you and help you with this, so that you can apply it with a chamber music group that you're involved with. You all can trade off jobs, and you can each take turns with one of these skills and really begin to learn it, to become comfortable with it. There's usually one person in the group who is great at admin stuff, and the danger is that you will just let them do it, and that they will also feel overwhelmed by all that they need to do. So try to spread it out when you're in a group.
Yeah. And then, rotating some things around too. Let's say okay, you've done this for a while, and if you want to change, well, let me take my hand at it. All of these things, as we said, is going to help you in the way the industry is these days. So
yeah.
Don't come to rehearsals or concerts 5 minutes beforehand. Well, we know we're not supposed to be late, but don't be that person who comes in and has to crawl all over you. I mean, you probably maybe have been in that situation where somebody's done that. And let's say, you got all your gear out. Maybe you're playing multiple instruments on a piece, and I got to move my stands and all my stuff just for this person. Or you're the person who's doing that. People don't like that. And it's just really not professional.
No, not at all. And I'll tell you, in my own orchestra in the St. Louis Symphony, there are a few people who routinely every day come to work, and everybody panics and thinks, oh no, are they okay? And they always get there, and they're in their chair by 5 till whatever, but they might get there at 6 till whatever. And so it's a little frustrating, because, if somebody is truly not there, then you're going to worry about them. And you have to also worry about filling their position if it's a concert. So you just please try to get there a half hour to 20 minutes before. I get there way early. I usually get there an hour before, but at least a half hour is really good. Just set up, try your reads, and then go get a cup of coffee if you want to, but you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Okay, good citizen stuff. Be careful building your friendships. What do I mean by that? What could go wrong? So say that you're really good friends with somebody who is, majoring in, music business and management, and you go to an orchestra and that's your best buddy, and suddenly they're a manager or they're involved in the admin. You have to be really careful about this. Some people will say, well, we're just all in this together. Well, until there's a negotiation, and suddenly you become the odd man out. You have to either pull back from your friend that you've been going out with every night and say, sorry, I need to really pay attention to what the union is doing. Or you end up kind of being ostracized by the orchestra, not to your face, but behind your back. People are not too happy when there are fellow musicians that kind of pal around with management, because there oftentimes are confidential conversations in these negotiating meetings that musicians and union wouldn't want shared with the management. So it's, even though you're friends with somebody, just be careful about that. I've seen a lot of young people get into an orchestra, and then they meet somebody and they're a fiance, and they're, oh, we're all going to work together. And I think, oh, be careful. So I'm not telling you not to date somebody like that, but I'm just warning you to be extremely careful about this. Be careful who you become friends with, because at some point it may really matter.
Yeah, and the same would be true if you're in a teaching position. Um, we wouldn't have a general manager per se, but you'd have an administrator, either the chair of your department or director. And if you were to become really close with that person, and then something happens, and maybe you're not doing your job so well, and then they're in a position of power, it gets very, very complicated. I know when I had the last class I took at Florida State when I was working on my doctorate, and Cliff Madsen was a music educator, brilliant man. And he didn't socialize. He went home at 6. He didn't want anybody calling him after work, after hours. And he felt strongly, and he really tried to make an impression upon us in that class that it's really not it's not a good idea to get too social. It doesn't mean don't be friends, don't be good colleagues, but you do have to be kind of careful because you just don't know what could happen out there.
I think the older I get, the more I appreciate my good colleagues, but my friendships, my really deep friendships, are outside of work. There's a couple of exceptions to that, but I think it's you'll find, I think a lot of times when a person gets a job, whether it's teaching or orchestra, you kind of pal around with the people that are close to your age, because there's usually a wide age spread. But it's really a good idea to develop relationships outside of your work environment as well. For most everything, do not talk about colleagues with each other. This goes for college age students or any professional. Don't talk with anybody in the front office, at your school, or at work. Now, if this is not true, if there's abuse or some sort of harassment going on, but just as a general, you don't really want to pal with the conductor or any managers or your office staff. It's not your job to tattle on a colleague. All right, there's a tendency to, well, this person is doing this, I can't believe they're treating me like that, or something, and that goes to the wrong people, and two things happen. That person might get in a lot of trouble, and two, you're going to become known as a gossip, and neither is a really good thing. These are things I never knew, until I kind of made some really bad mistakes with the gossip thing. So resist that urge to gossip or critique your colleagues.
Yeah, there was a long time ago, one of the first auditions I took, and I won't say where it was. And I didn't win that job, but I had a friend later who I met who played in that orchestra. And there were spies, musician spies in the orchestra who would report back to the conductor. I mean, can you imagine being in that situation, not knowing if your stand partner is going to be ratting on you for something? So it's just not cool.
It isn't, and it does happen in every size
It doesn't
orchestra.
happen everywhere.
I think it probably happens, doesn't it?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Academia too, yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I'm going to tell you all a story. I have a friend who was a principal player in another orchestra. This was quite some time ago, and the conductor didn't like him and said, you need to move down from principal to a lower position, and I'm going to have a private audition. And so that's what this conductor did. And he asked a friend of mine to apply for this position. And this is the kind of thing, this is how all of us want to aspire to what this person did. This person came to this audition. It was in a different orchestra, not St. Louis, and not clarinet. This person was asked to come and got up on this stage at the audition and said, before I start to play, I just want to let you know, I went to your concert last night. I went to your symphony concert last night, and I heard this principal player play, and he's fantastic. You don't need a new principal player. And if I got this job, if I won it, I would not take it. That's the kind of integrity that we want to have, not the, hey, let's network, let's do whatever it takes to run over somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be like this person who had such integrity as to stand up for somebody who really wasn't a weak player, but might be considered a weaker player. That's what unity is, and that's what really taking care of each other means. So when there's a vulnerable player in your chamber group, it's your job to support them, even if you think they don't play very well. And even if a big opportunity, like for this friend of mine, it might go by, but if you do the right thing, it's going to come back to you in a good way. So I have real strong feelings about this. I've seen my colleagues, some really rip into older players. And I think it's really important to remember that we really want to support each other. Now, I just saw somebody raise their hand.
They did?
I did. I don't know. I saw the raise the hand signal. If you want, if you want, just unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay, maybe it was just a mistake. Libby, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's great. I remember, yeah, the review process in an orchestra is never a pleasant one. And in the collegiate level, we don't have it called this here, but it's called post-tenure review. And it's just not pleasant. And it's when maybe somebody doesn't think you're doing your job very well. And then there's a committee of people, probably of your peers, who have to decide whether that person keeps the job or not. A very difficult position to be in. So yeah, in the sense that in this regard, I believe we all are in it together, that we do need to support people and older, weaker players, if that's what you want to call them, even though in this remarkable story, this person really was not a weak player. But no, thank you for that, Diana.
And I will say that the person in question who was being told to step down maintained his job for another 15 years after this.
It's great.
So another thing, separate a person's performing ability from who they are as a person. You know, there's a tendency for us to want to ridicule somebody who maybe is struggling with their playing. Maybe they have an injury. You don't know what's going on in their life. And yet they might be a really wonderful human being. Sometimes musicians will shun other musicians. Maybe they don't mean to, but they will treat them differently. Mm-hmm. And so it's very important to separate a person's performing ability from who they are as a person.
Yep.
Any questions so far? I guess not. Okay. Is musical chemistry in a group, is it natural? I mean, do you have instant sparks when you're in a group and you go, this is going to be so great? Or is it cultivated? Anybody have an idea what they think?
I'm not seeing any hands go up.
All right. Well, Libby and I believe that it's some of both, but you can cultivate a good working relationship. Remember when I talked at the beginning that there are, sort of our codes that orchestras have, that groups have, that maybe a clarinet studio at the school you're at has. Some of it may be unspoken and you're just supposed to know, which isn't really a great way. But it's pretty easy to set a good tone, for no pun intended, well, maybe intended, for your group. Libby, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Setting a tone for the group?
Ha.
Yeah, I know. I think a lot of the things you have listed here are great. you need to create, I mean, and ideally, you have an environment where everyone is free to speak, but doing so in a way that is respectful of one another. Um, I've had the opportunity to work with members of the Berlin Woodwind Philharmonic Woodwind Quintet. They've come to our school a couple times, amazing group of musicians. And that ensemble started as a group of friends, 5 friends in the Berlin Philharmonic who developed this ensemble. And they are friends and they play amazingly well together. And so, to answer this question, I think there was some innate chemistry there, but I also know that they've cultivated that. And they've done it by being respectful because each one of them they're incredible musicians and incredible people. So we do have to be sure that we're not, talking about each other behind their back, those sorts of things, and being responsible. We just have to be responsible again to our own parts. And yeah, I mean, setting the stage for all of those things. And it's musical, but it's also on a personal level.
You know, I
So
read an article just this morning, and I can't remember the author's name. He's in a string quartet, and he talked about being psychologically safe in a group, and so that all ideas in a rehearsal are given equal consideration in a respectful manner. And I know we've probably all been in groups where somebody doesn't respond well or says something in a snarky way, and it creates, a little bit of bad blood, and people let it go, and then it builds and it gets worse and worse, and then it becomes like an unsafe place to share musical ideas. And this takes great maturity. But I believe part of it is actually setting up a contract where maybe the first or second time that you get together, you talk about what's important to this group. What do we really want? And I think that all ideas in a rehearsal should be given equal consideration in a respectful manner. That suggestions that somebody might make and say, Diana, you're out of tune, maybe a little bit on this, that I would take that well and say, oh, really? Okay, let me see if I can fix that, instead of, really, I don't know whether that's really true. What if it's you? Or something. And then again, no gossip. Making sure, as Libby has said, prepare the music well. No backstabbing, no shaming. And use the royal we. So in other words, what do I mean by that? I mean, let's try this again. Maybe we can, play a little bit better in tune. Let's just, can we try the pitch in this particular area, instead of, I think you're out of tune and I want to tune with the flute player, and you're vibrating sharp, or somebody says, well, you're flat on your, your concert E flat. So can you fix that? Maybe say it in a way using the word we. Let's try this. Let us try this. We might want to consider this. And you say it in a way, thinking about it ahead of time. I was the worst at this, and I really have had to learn this, and I still need to think carefully before I speak. And when there are hurts, you got to talk through it. So my quintet in college, we had a big dramatic blow up, which is funny. The flutist Rick Sherman teaches at Michigan State, and we still talk about how ridiculous we were. I wouldn't read through anything one day. He brought in a stack of music to read, and I kind of made fun of it and kept joking about it. And he got really mad. He said, I'm done. And he stormed out of the room. And I said, fine, because we were 19 and really dumb and not very mature. And then a few days later, I went to him and I cried and said I was sorry. And, he cried a little bit. No, well, I shouldn't say that. But we both admitted that we were wrong, and we went back to playing, and it was fine. So sometimes that happens, and you just have to be a big enough person to accept the blame where necessary and to work it out. And again, no gossip about each other is really important. That creates a real safe environment. And discuss your goals. Do you want to be a reading group? Do you want to play gigs for money? How many recitals do you want to do a year? How many rehearsals for each concert? What responsibilities should each person have? If you set the tone in this manner using a group, some sort of a contract like this is really going to help with a lot of issues. it'll prevent them.
Yeah, I have a friend, she's a saxophone teacher at University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Nikki Roman, and she plays in the Fuego saxophone quartet. And they go all over the place. And they have a mission statement. They, I'm sure, have had all of these discussions. They have separate, each person has their own job within the ensemble, just like, we've got written down here in the next couple of bullet points. But these are all really important things to discuss, because you can't do everything. And so it's important to kind of narrow your focus. Maybe you do start out just playing gigs, and maybe it morphs into something else. So yep, good stuff.
Yeah. And be sensitive to everybody. You're not the center of the universe. And you're one of many, or one of several players. So be respectful, and honestly treat others better than yourself. It isn't all about you. And I think, remaining humble is a laudable goal for all of us. There's never a time when we're too good to hear advice. Never a time. Conductor can get up in front of the orchestra and they tell me something, and I know some players my age and older who are like, they don't want to hear it. But I say, I love to hear it. I want to keep learning. And so we always want to maintain that inquisitiveness and that ability to take advice and learn and grow. When we stop learning and growing, it's time to hang it up. And you just don't want to be that way.
Yep.
Deeper stuff. Deeper stuff. What is integrity?
Anybody want to chime in? Feel free to unmute. We don't have a large group, so if you want to, I think you have the capacity.
How would you define integrity?
You can type it in the chat. Ethics. Clara says ethics.
Yeah. What's ethics? What are ethics? Integrity is ethics. Integrity is can be defined a lot of different ways. Honestly, we don't talk about integrity very much anymore, do we? We talk more about like networking, and I think it's really important to remember that integrity in music and in our relationships is extremely important. Libby?
Honest work. Julie Sanders, honest work. Yeah.
Honest work with each other,
really
right?
true. So, we speak about, I've used this word, keep the integrity of the rhythm here, yeah, there's that honesty to the pulse. So, being truthful and humble, and it's true. We are, and it's not just in music about the whole networking, it's in all of society. And without getting controversial, I think it's a lot of the reason why so much of our society is the way it is these days.
Yeah.
Because we don't talk about these things, and people have to, it has to be my way, or it has to be my way. And, music is something that should draw us together. I know when I play, and I haven't been playing as much during COVID-19, and I'm telling you, just getting to play a little bit or hearing that live music, it's incredible after such a long time of not having it. So it's kind of like bringing yourself back inward. And so to me, that's part of that integrity too. How do we keep that honesty with ourselves and with everybody else?
I believe that this really reflects in how we make music as well. You'll hear, or I have said myself, that person has great musical integrity. Anybody want to take a stab what they think musical integrity would be?
Self-consciousness from Danielle.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's a good way to say it. Yeah, I think not being not overdoing musical lines because you think that's going to somehow be more dramatic and help you. It's just having a real honest view of a musical line and seeing the beauty in it or the lack of beauty. Really getting in touch with what the composer wants. So it's less about each one of us. It's more about really serving the composer, serving the music. When we start to think in those terms, it really changes our playing. And it really takes a lot of stress off of us as well. When we're so concerned with ourselves, we tend not to be so honest. The highest compliment that somebody can give to me is saying, "You're an honest player." I love that. I want to be that. That to me includes having musical integrity. Anybody else?
Yeah, Jack said remaining true to the composer's intent.
Yes, amen.
Danielle, conscious-minded musicality. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, those are great.
They're really good.
Yes, that's terrific. Okay, understanding divide and conquer. This is a sometimes a union term, but it really applies in so many ways to a lot of things we do. So the actual definition of divide and conquer is gaining and maintaining power by breaking up large concentrations of power into pieces that individually have less power than the one implementing the strategy. Okay, so what that means is, I'm going to put this in simple terms. In an orchestra negotiation, a manager may love to say to musicians, "Hey, let's go out for a beer. Let's just talk, not about anything." And pretty soon you're talking about something with in regards to the orchestra, and maybe you make a mistake and tell them, "Well, there's this problem in the oboe section," and they're arguing, or I don't really believe what the orchestra believes about the contract. I'm with you. We're all in the same boat. We can take a pay cut. We understand you're just trying to keep us together. And at that point, that's divide and conquer in a real true sense, that a manager might come to a musician and try to separate them from the group. And so you don't hear about this very often. There was a situation recently where a group was supposed to go on an international trip, and a few of the players were told they couldn't go for some governmental reasons. And instead of saying, we're not going if we can't all go, there was a lot of hemming and hawing about that. And the people that couldn't go felt terrible, and it was kind of a big mess. And I don't want to say where it was, but some of you probably know what I'm talking about. But in an orchestra, when we go on a tour, there are often issues with people with green cards and from other countries, and we do not go unless the whole group can go. So remember, you don't want to participate in this, and you don't want to be somebody who causes division and splits in a group or in your chamber group or anything. You want to try to stay unified as much as possible. Maybe you want to add anything to that?
It's just very true. And I know you've got ageism down here. I'm just thinking about somebody who I worked with early on in my time here, who he didn't live very much longer after I got here. And as we were talking earlier, maybe his playing wasn't as strong as it once had been, but boy, do I miss him. He really had integrity, kind-hearted person who would do anything for you. And very much somebody who stuck with, was important in trying to keep the group together, just as you said. Miss him a lot.
It's the people with lots of years of experience that the tendency is to go, well, they don't play as well, but they have something else to offer. They have wisdom. They know how to deal with a conductor who's picking on them. If you ask them, they'll tell you, here's what you do. Or, hey, this conductor is like way out of bounds in terms of the tempos. that they're taking. What do we do? And you might hear some really great conductor stories if it's a person who's been in a group for a long time. Same thing with teachers, you know. And so you want to really seek out older players to coach you and to mentor you. And if you're in an orchestra, seek out the older players and befriend them, because they're going to teach you so much more than the people in the group that you work with, you know, that maybe people your own age. It's good to get out of your comfort zone in terms of friends and cliques and all of that. One other thing is separating a player's ability. Has anybody ever had an experience where you've noticed somebody really had trouble separating a person's ability from who they are as a person? Without naming any names, you're welcome to either unmute yourself or put something in chat. Oh, got a few here.
Oh, Julie says she doesn't quite understand the question.
So for instance, I'll give an example that might be the best way. So one time I was backstage in another orchestra and I heard some players saying, oh, that person's a jerk. You know, they can't play anymore and they're just a jerk. And I asked him who it was. And then I said, why do you think they're a jerk? Because they're a really nice person. Well, because they can't play anymore. And I said, so you're saying this person is a jerk because you don't like the way this person plays? You need to separate that person. That person has done amazing things with foster children and has given service to his community in very, very big ways. And, you know, I really had trouble with that idea that somebody just assumed they were a jerk because they couldn't play well anymore, or what they thought was not a high enough level. So that's what I mean by that. Is that a little clearer?
Yeah, she said she got that. Yeah.
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 Yeah, and you'll find, you may think, I mean, it may happen to you in college, you know, there might be a teacher who's elderly, and somebody might make fun of them, right? But as it turns out, they have a lot of wisdom, and they were or still are really great performers, and maybe they've done some really incredible things in their lives. So take the time to get to know them instead of criticizing them. Grace towards others. Libby?
No, it's all true. I mean, I just reflect on my own immaturity back in the day. And, you know, as you get older, there sure is so much more wisdom that comes along with it. And I'm still continuing to learn how to behave better toward everybody. But I know I made a lot of mistakes. So don't think that by us sharing these things that, you know, we had it all together. I mean, speaking for myself, I didn't have it all together when I was 20 or 30, and maybe not even by 40. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in an orchestra, I don't know if it's true. You'll have to share. Is this true in teaching? The people with experience, they'll let you know. Some of them will say, you know what, you're out of line for saying that. You better cut it out. You know, why don't you just mind what you're doing with your music and maybe zip it, you know? That will happen in an orchestra that has a wide spread of ages. And if you're smart, you'll pay attention to it and get humble really quickly. Does that happen? Does that happen?
Yes. Yes, there sometimes have been some colleagues who, you know, we kind of have this saying before you get tenure that one of my colleagues says, you just want to kind of fly under the radar. You know, I don't want to do anything that's going to draw, especially any negative attention toward you. You don't want to get too controversial, you know, because you've got all these people every year are kind of deciding your fate. Now, if you're doing a great job and everything, you have nothing to worry about, but you really do kind of want to zip it, you know, and wait until you get tenure in that job. Not that you want to become a jerk then, but yeah, you do really need to, you do really need to kind of be careful. But without, you know, you don't want to sacrifice what you believe or what you feel, but there's, you know, you have to think about within reason. Everything is within reason what you do. So, but yeah, the older colleagues or people who've been around a while, it's the same thing. They've got a lot of wisdom there too. Yeah.
In keeping with this, the two isms that are usually not discussed enough, and there are certainly a lot of isms that we need to discuss these days, but two, and we've kind of touched on them, are ageism. There tends to be, you get to a certain age and suddenly people are like, what are you speaking up for? You should just be quiet. And there is a lack of attention. I've seen this happen to some of my older colleagues. In fact, one of my dearest friends who retired a couple years ago, I wrote a blog post about this actually. He said when he first got to the orchestra, it was the goal of all the young players to have some of the people that had been there a long time actually talk to them. And they lived for this. And he said, now I'm 75 and no one pays any attention to me at all. It's changed so much. And I think, oh, that is so sad. This man has had an incredible life outside of music, but an incredible life within music. I learned so much from him, and it made me really sad to hear that he felt that his age meant that people weren't paying attention to him anymore. It's really too bad. And then
Yeah.
this playingism, which is what I talked about before, separating a person from their playing ability.
Mhm. Yeah. And when we're young, we don't think about those things. I am doing some work in my genealogy. Wow, I wish I'd talked to my father more about things when I was young. You don't think about it. And it's a little bit different, but it's sort of the same kind of thing. There's so much wisdom in older players and older musicians and older people. Just think about what they've seen in their lives. And you can learn a lot from that.
Yeah, it's really true. So practice good etiquette, practice good communication, practice good social skills in the same way that we, and notice I use the royal we practice music. There is nothing like the joy of working together in music. As Libby said, that's all been sort of ripped away from us. And I know I've been giving driveway concerts. And when we first started doing this on our driveway, I was almost in tears. I had forgotten the love and the joy of playing together and, watching each other and interacting in that really wonderful way that we can do in music that a lot of the world just never has a chance to do. And also the joy of seeing an audience come alive. These kinds of things reflect when in performances. If we look happy and not fake, if we really genuinely look happy, relaxed, and like we're having a good time, the audience is going to respond much better. And really, that's why we do this, right? We don't do it for ourselves. We don't do it for our own ego. We do it in order to share this incredible body of music that we have with audiences.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is something that I give to all of my students. These are characteristics of a great musician in my studio. And I know, Libby, you've used some of this too. I'll tell
Yeah.
you that some of this came off of an internet site. And then also a lot of these have come from my students when I'll ask them, what does it mean to be mature? Right?
Yeah,
So,
I've used this and I have my students do an assignment where one week they're given this and the next week we talk about it. What did you fill in? Yeah. So go on though, Diane, please read what you've
no,
got.
that's it. We don't need to read the whole thing, but this sort of quantifies what we've been talking about. The idea of maturity. You talk through your differences in the studio instead of lashing out. Get your work done in time. You refrain from slander and gossip. That's very hard to do. We're kind of taught, aren't we? We're taught to critique ourselves, and then it spills out to other people, and it's kind of fun. Everybody gets kind of in the habit of doing that, but it's very damaging. I know that people talked about me in college one time, and I heard about it, and it damaged me for a number of years before I finally kind of talked it through with a teacher, and they said, this is not yours to hang on to. But it damaged me. It damaged how I played. And so we have to be really careful about that. I'd be curious to hear from some of you what on this page, and there's another page coming, but in maturity, grit, honest, with love, and courageous, what really hits you that you think is important? And I just want to point out from Julie Sanders, she says, and this is so true, there are really good players that are also good people too. So thankful. And oh, isn't that the truth? I would say the majority are. Thank you for that, Julie. Anybody have thoughts on maturity, grit, honest with a big dose of love, courageous? I think we have a comment. Oh, got to leave the meeting. Okay. You have 10 more minutes. All right, good. Thank you. Any thoughts?
Connection breaking. Is our connection breaking? One of us breaking up, Danielle? Okay.
Oh, okay. All right. So, what do you think about courageous, being courageous, having courage?
Feel free to unmute if you'd like.
Yeah, just unmute and talk. It's easier than chat. No? Okay.
Oh, okay.
Anything you want to mention, Libby?
Oh, here's one. Julie says, courage is, hang on, freely questioning. Ah, okay.
I like that.
I like that too. Yeah,
Yeah, it's hard to be courageous in that regard, isn't it? To freely question. That's a really, I like that. I might add that to my sheet.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like doing this with my students because it's amazing the things that they come up with. You know, it shows me how deep they are. So,
Yeah.
why don't we go to your next page since we
Sure.
just got a few more minutes.
So I'm just going to talk for a minute about true humility. I mean, because there are always people are like, oh no, I didn't sound very good. And, you know, it really did. And maybe they really are meaning that. But then there's also some people who kind of act that way and really are not. But humbleness doesn't mean that you don't think you played well. Humbleness is an attitude of, you know, considering others' opinions, you know, better or the same as your own. I like this, that it's you work to be free from arrogance or defensiveness, humility, that you ground yourself in truth. And this is something I struggle with. I struggle with excessive worry about what I sound like. And so in a sense, that's actually paying too much attention to myself, which, you know, some people might say, oh, if you beat yourself up, that means you're really humble. But I don't think so. I think humbleness is something else. And there is this element of serving music and the composer more than our own ego. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, has anybody ever been in a situation where the quality of your day was determined by how well your practicing went? Yeah, for many years. It's not a good way to live your life. Yeah.
Yeah, it really isn't.
And Julie says, me. Yeah.
I think if we're all honest, that it has happened to all of us. And I'll tell you, there are some professional players who never want to admit that they are insecure. They don't want to admit that they get nervous. But I'm going to tell you, everybody does. Everybody gets nervous and everybody struggles with these things. They just don't want to admit it. They want to present a certain image. And it's kind of too bad, because I think it's important for students to understand that everybody struggles with these things, not just you.
So true. Teachers struggle with it too. And I think you know, it's okay to show that to your students. You know, I didn't do that very well. So
I love this quote at the bottom. I had to, by C.S. Lewis. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less. I think that pretty much sums up humility well.
Very well.
And in terms of the humor, I think, we have to learn appropriate humor, but, some of you may be too goofy. Some of you may be too serious. So you have to know yourself and work towards a balance. I used to be way too goofy, and I think now I'm way too serious. I've kind of flipped. I don't know. How about you, Libby?
I was way too serious, and now probably a little bit more goofy.
That's good. Oh, we have a couple more comments. Courage is freely questioning. Me, ha. Well,
Anybody? Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, yeah. No, just wanting to see if anybody had any questions. So it kind of wraps up what we have, or comments, or.
What's it like to be a teacher in a university? What's it like to play in an orchestra? What's it like while we're not playing and you're still teaching?
Oh, so Julie wants to know if we can view this afterwards. You're talking about the characteristics, I'm assuming, Julie?
I think they're leaving these up on YouTube, but I can also, if you send Woodwind Fest your email, I'm happy to send that to you as an attachment if you'd like.
Yeah, it's good stuff. All right, well, if there's no questions, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so
Stay
much.
well and safe.
Take care.
Bye.